Mysterious entities like to haunt abandoned places, and today we're here to talk about ghost towns all over the US of A and an Italian island as well. St. Elmo is a ghost town and allegedly the best preserved ghost town in all of Colorado, while also boasting the most hauntings and paranormal activity of any ghost town in the state. This town was a major gold and silver trading center and the hub of life for many pioneers, outlaws, and, well, miners for decades. Originally called Fort City, St. Elmo was settled in 1878 and became an official township in 1880. The residents of the town were actually forced to change the name because there was already too many forest cities in the area. Little fun fact. The most famous ghost out of St. Elmo is Annabelle, otherwise known as Dirty Annie Stark, a descendant of Anton and Anna Stark who arrived in St. Elmo with the Pacific Railroad back in 1881. Anton was a section boss in the mines, while Anna ran the Home Comfort Hotel located on Poplar Street and also the general store. Both structures are still standing today, by the way. So Anna was known as a cruel and harsh woman who never allowed her three offspring, Roy, Tony, and Annabelle, out into the town to mingle or work alongside what she deemed the simple townfolk. Annabelle grew up attractive and passionate for the town, and her love of it was fierce. After the death of her mother, Annabelle inherited the hotel, and the once impeccably clean establishment fell into shambles. Annabelle also began to lose her grip on reality. The town soon called her Dirty Annie because she would come out into the street in filthy clothing, her hair was in a tangled mess, but a lot of folks assume that now that she is free of the harsh rule of her mother, this was her quiet rebellion. Residents remember her strolling the main street with her firearm loaded, hung over one shoulder, ready to protect the town from anybody who dared to threaten it. And since her passing, she is still found roaming the streets. Only a short while after she passed away, the hotel was left to a family friend whose grandchildren were playing inside the hotel when suddenly all of the doors slammed shut and the temperature dropped about 20 degrees. The people inside cried and screamed, and finally the room returned to outside temperature and the doors slowly swung open. There's other stories as well. A woman skiing down Poplar Street at dusk was struck by a peculiar sight of a lovely looking woman in a long white gown glaring out of the second-story window of the Home Comfort Hotel. The skier was shocked. She knew that the owner of the hotel was on vacation and nobody was supposed to be allowed inside. As she turned to see what the woman was eyeing, she noticed snowmobiles approaching. Sidebar, snowmobiling is illegal in St. Elmo, so the skier went and advised the group and they were like, okay, out of here. But when she turned back to look at the hotel, the woman in the window, who was still watching, just lowered her head, nodded, and just vanished before this woman's eyes. Curious and in disbelief, the skier went back the next day to find every window and door were locked. When the owner of the hotel returned, the two women searched the property, and they couldn't find anything. So was Annabelle keeping watch? Let me know in the comments what you think. Calico was an Old West mining town that's been around since 1881. Nestled in the Mojave Desert with about 500 silver mines in the area, it took only 2 years for the town's population to reach 1,200 way back when, and by 1890 it was home to over 3,500 people. However, the dream ended pretty quickly because with the Silver Purchase Act of 1890 pushing down silver prices, everything went kaput, and by 1900 Calico was abandoned entirely. It has remained so ever since, despite several attempts to rejuvenate the place. However, just because the living have abandoned it, doesn't mean that it's uninhabited. Over the years, Calico has built up a reputation as one of the most haunted places in all of California, if not the entire United States. One of the most commonly spotted entities haunting this lovely ghost town is a woman by the name of Lucy Lane. History suggests that she ran Calico's general store alongside her husband, John Robert Lane. Lucy was well into her 90s when she finally passed, by the way. So it seems only natural that she would want to stick around in the town where she lived and died. Visitors to Calico have frequently reported seeing Lucy walking between what was once her home and the general store. She is easily recognizable by her attire, the beautiful black lace dress in which she was buried. So it would have been easy for Bannack in Montana to go the way of other ghost towns and be completely obliterated by the passage of time, but today it is a well-maintained state park that, despite its deep isolation in the Montana hills, greets thousands upon thousands of tourists every year. And while it might seem desolate and leave you feeling more alone than you have ever felt before, legend says that nobody is ever alone while wandering the weary roads of said town. The Hotel Mead has been the focal point of numerous paranormal claims and is often said to be the most haunted building in this ghost-clogged town. So one of its most famous phantom residents is Miss Dorothy Dunn. So she was once the daughter of the hotel meets manager, and apparently she passed away in a pond in 1916. And since her death, she's been seen in the hotel, spotted through the windows, always wearing a blue dress. No, not Dorothy Gale. Her spirit has also been known to speak with people. So if you hear a voice and you don't see anything, just Dorothy. The island of Poveglia is located in a lagoon near Venice and is famous for being one of the most haunted places in all of Italy. Tourists and locals alike are banned from this island, which was used for centuries as a place to exile the sick to prevent the spread of disease and contain the mentally ill in an asylum built in the late 1800s. For context, in 1348, when the bubonic plague arrived in Venice and Poveglia, well, this little island became a quarantine colony. The plague on average killed 1 out of 3 Europeans. And because Venice was like, uh-oh, we don't know what to do, they exiled a lot of their symptom-bearing citizens here. At the island center, the dead and those too sick to protest were burned. This included the tens of thousands of citizens dying on the mainland. And these fires would burn once more in 1630 when the Black Death swept through the city. The small island was a mass burial ground, and ashes from human remains make up as much as 50% of the island's soil. The deaths of nearly 160,000 people on the island have given it its nickname, the Island of Ghosts. A doctor at the asylum was known to have experimented on patients with crude lobotomies. He jumped from the bell tower in the 1930s after claiming he'd been driven mad. Well, decades later, nearby residents claim to still hear the bell, although it was removed many years earlier. A report titled Haunted History states that in recent history some folks tried to restore some stuff on the island, but it stopped, and there's no explanation why. And finally, though closed to the public, Deadman's Island is home to ghostly lore that is centuries old. The list of spectral sightings and strange phenomena grows by the year, ranging from loud clanging noises that ring out in the dead of the night, to hurried footsteps that pace back and forth, or the unearthly moan of a young woman's sobs that fill the air. Tales of supernatural encounters stretch back more than, well, a minute. A long time ago, it was the site of a fierce battle. I'm talking northern and southern nations that fought over claims to said island. The southern nation kidnapped 200 folks from the north and held them captive, but when 200 young northern warriors traded themselves for the hostages' freedoms, they were cut down on the spot. In the 1860s, the government offered to sell the island to one Samuel Brighouse. He declined the offer, but one of his partners, John Morton, set out to explore the area anyways. He rode to the island, where he found hundreds of red cedar boxes scattered in amongst the foliage and perched in the upper branches of the trees, and quickly discovered they were fragile when he reached up to touch one and it crumbled above his head, showering him with the bones of its long-deceased inhabitant. Yeah, that's when you run for the hills and never look back. In the 1890s, a plague descended upon Vancouver, and this island was used as a pest house. So, if you were falling ill, you were sent here for quarantine. If you got better, you got home. If you didn't, this is the end for you. From 1899 to 1930, this island was home to a logging dispute. Local authorities and residents alike were outraged. And at 6:30 a.m. on April 24th of 1899, when the developer headed out to the island with 30 men, then Mayor James Garden brought almost the entire police force with him to the island. When the developer attempted to cut down a tree, he and his men were arrested. And there's been a lot of other incidents throughout the decades until the lease expired in 1930. In a 1909 incident, police occupied the island overnight to keep the loggers at bay, and they heard the rattling of dead men's bones and shrieking skeletons that threatened to haunt anybody who dared cut down trees on the island. Oh right, this island is home to too many bodies to count, and a lot of spirits and a lot of ghosts.